Do you have a kind of framework for thinking about the space today? I mean, it's evolving very rapidly. So how do you think about it today? And then if you think out on a 10-year time horizon, what's the framework you use to think about the opportunity?
Yeah, I would think about it in a couple of ways. One is, first, sometimes it's easier to focus just on the customers that are going to buy AI products and try to benefit from them, rather than the companies that are competing to make AI. So just think about the customers for a moment. One lens I use on that is, if you think of any business that is very complex, there's just a ton of complexity in their business, and the complexity adds cost. And this is the sort of company that has a good enough product and a strong enough market position that when it finds a way to reduce cost, it doesn't have to also reduce prices. Some companies, when they find a way to cut costs, they also have to cut prices because they're in a very competitive industry and price really matters, and all their competitors are finding ways to cut prices go down all the time. But take SAP, the German software company. Their customer relationships are famously long-lasting. Nobody really uninstalls SAP once they've spent the hundreds of millions of dollars it takes to get going on it. But it's extremely complicated software, and they get hundreds of thousands of customer service requests a day about very detailed things in the software. Well, AI is perfect for them. If they can get an AI to start answering first hundreds and then thousands, then tens of thousands, and maybe half or three-quarters of those customer questions coming in, they will save a lot of money on customer service, and all that savings will probably go straight to their bottom line. It'll become profit for them because they're not the sort of company that has to reduce price when they lower cost. So sometimes it's easier to just see who are the beneficiaries. And big successful company, a lot of complicated business processes, pricing power, that's a great place to look for AI beneficiaries. In terms of AI production, I think of it, there's 4 layers of the stack at least. The bottom layer is these are very compute intensive applications. When you ask Gemini or ChatGPT a question and it takes 30 seconds to answer, it's not because the internet's slow, it's because it's grinding that question of yours through hundreds or maybe even thousands of GPUs, of graphic processing unit chips. It's just very compute intensive. And so as AI becomes more popular, it's just great for the semiconductor industry. That industry will still be cyclical, but it has been a growth industry since it was invented in the 1960s. I think AI is going to help it be even more of a growth industry. And one thing about the semiconductor industry that's interesting is there's not that many semiconductor companies that can do cutting-edge semiconductors, whether making them or making the machines that make them. So I think there's a half a dozen companies that almost for sure will be bigger and more profitable 5 years from now than they are today. That's a great layer of the stack to invest in. Once you have all your semiconductors, you have to put them somewhere. That's an even more concentrated layer of the stack. There's really only 3 publicly traded companies: Amazon with its AWS business, Microsoft with Azure, Google with Google Cloud Platform. Those are the 3 big cloud infrastructure companies. Maybe Oracle will succeed in that. We'll see. There's a recent IPO called CoreWeave. Maybe they'll succeed in it. We'll see. But those big 3, Amazon, Microsoft, and Google, for sure are going to succeed in being leading places for cloud infrastructure. So that's a very concentrated part of this industry, and it's almost certain that AI will cause that whole industry to grow. So that's very promising. To me, the hardest layer to figure out right now is the models themselves. This is one thing where my opinion has really changed. 3 years ago, I would have said to you something like, well, Google's got a 10-year head start on this, and OpenAI's got a 7-year head start compared to other labs that haven't even gotten going yet. And so I think there's something about these models which are easy to copy right now. There's not that many scholars who really know how to train these models. They all know each other. Many of them went to school with each other or worked with each other at other startups. They go from startup to startup looking for ways to have more interesting careers or make more money. They share all their secrets. And so there are way more companies at the cutting edge than I would have guessed.
How do you think about open architecture models compared to closed models?
So first, as consumers, and then we can talk about as being model makers, and then maybe as being governments or as being society. As a consumer, open architecture models, really what these mostly are is open weight models. People will give you the trained output, this big array of billions and billions of parameters. They'll open source that. Nobody's really, or none of the big players are at this point open sourcing their training data. and the software they use to do the training. But still, just getting the weights is good because you can take the weights and download them and run them on your own laptop or in your own data center, and you don't need anyone else's permission. So as a consumer, this open sourcing trend, it's just amazing for you. You get more competition, you get things that you can run yourself. So if you have an unused GPU or CPU, you can run it and you don't have to pay anybody else. You get more privacy because you can run it on your own equipment, so you don't have to sort of reveal all your innermost thoughts to ChatGPT or Gemini. So as a consumer, these things are amazing. You can also get past whatever censorship is going on. These models many of the big companies are training their models to be safe, but one person's safe is another person's not truthful. And so if you really want to have something where you can sort of remove all the constraints on what it's willing to talk about, you can do that with open source. So there's a lot of pros for the consumers. For the model makers, I think the closed source model makers have to be pretty disappointed in this explosion of open source models, because you have, one of the biggest proponents of these open models is Meta, the owner of Facebook and WhatsApp and Instagram. They are spending billions of dollars, the same amount that what Google and OpenAI are spending to try to stay on the cutting edge of models. And Google and OpenAI don't release the weights and try to charge you money to run queries on the models. And Llama comes up with a model that's at that same level of sophistication and that says, here you go, it's free for everyone to use it.
Why are they doing that?
Well, they have a theory, and I think it's actually a pretty good theory for them, which is the thing they really want to make sure they have is a cutting edge model that they can rely on. And so one way to have that is to do the closed source thing that Google and OpenAI are doing. But if you can keep up with them, then you'll have a cutting edge model. Or if you open source a model, it just attracts help from many more people, right? Because there's a lot of people out there who want to tinker. They want to tinker on their own. They want to run it on their own. They want to inspect and see how it works. And those same people will notice bugs in it or come up with feature enhancements. And because they're free to use it however they want to, they'll publish the bug fixes and they'll publish the feature enhancements. So you can build this community of people around you. So that's how Linux ended up outcompeting Windows. All the big server applications in every data center in the world now really run on Linux, which was an open source thing. And since it was open source and free and you could benefit from your own labor that you put into it, it became this thing. If you have an Android phone, that runs on Linux. If you have an iPhone, that runs on something called BSD, which is also an open source form of Unix. So when you have an open source product, it can attract people. It can attract people who want to work for you or build on top of it. And so it just makes the whole development process more efficient. So yeah, on the one hand, they are spending billions of dollars and not really charging anybody, but they do seem to have improved the chances that they will be on the cutting edge of model development for as long as they want to continue with this strategy.